have two cases from the end of 2022 that have actually carried over into the new year that I will be going over, as well as a new case that actually developed over this past weekend. All of these cases are equally devastating in how they were very senseless things that happened to certain victims. So we will be covering the case of the four Idaho students who were murdered, the Shanquellarobinson story, and a new case of the of Jamia Harris, which just happened over this past weekend. So if these cases are something that are sensitive for you, completely understand. You do not have to watch this video. But for those of you who may or may not have already known about this case and are interested in hearing about it and are interested in the updates of the first two cases, please stay tuned and watch the rest of this video. So we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna start with the Idaho students. So if you may or may not know, there has been an alleged, and I only say alleged because there has not been a court hearing in this case. So the alleged murderer of the four Idaho students is Bryan Kohberger. So on the morning of November 13th, 2022, Ethan Chapman, Madison Mogan, Zaina Kernodle, and Kaylee Goncalves were all found murdered in a house that they rented and shared. All four students attended the University of Idaho. Now, Bryan Kohberger was a 28-year-old PhD criminology student, and he attended Washington State University. So Bryan Kohberger is being charged with 4 counts of first-degree murder and 1 count of felony burglary. So the people of this college town in Idaho, they felt that this city was a very safe place. Apparently there hadn't been a murder there since, I believe, 2015 from what I've read. So this was a place where people felt like they could leave their doors unlocked and opened at night. The college students were pretty tight knit, you know, like with friends and things of that sort. The locals there, they still felt, you know, pretty safe with, like, you know, college kids come from all over the country, all over the world even sometimes, but they still had this sense of community in this part of Idaho where everyone relatively felt very safe. And so with this being a place that like everyone there felt so safe to, you know, like have these sorts of practices, it made the police even more inclined to find out what happened. The way in which they tracked down Kohberger was that there was a white Hyundai Elantra that was caught on video footage that was leaving the area. Then they found out that that car was registered to a student who attended Washington State University. So from having a possible suspect, they tracked the phone number of Mr. Kohberger, who had given his number in a traffic stop back in August. So the murder happened in November. Kohberger was stopped in a routine traffic stop in August. So, you know, gave over his information to the police and everything. So there was some sort of record that the police had on him. When the police ran his phone number through like their database to find where it had pinged to see where he was during the time of the murders, there were actually no pings that were found on that night or at the time. And of course, you know, police believe that this was just all in an effort to avoid being tracked, avoid his steps being tracked. Again, he is a criminology major, getting his PhD, his doctorate in criminology. So he is very fond of the ins and outs. Well, apparently not that fond because he got caught, but he is pretty fond of the ins and outs of how, you know, like police work and tracking down criminals and all of this stuff works. So I guess that was something that he thought was just so smart, but obviously, like, if you cut off your phone and all of this stuff, and then it just makes you look more suspicious, honestly. So once they had this development or this idea that Kohberger was basically their prime suspect, they had, ruled out so many other people. Like, there was, like a boyfriend, or an ex-boyfriend of another one of the girls. There was another guy who they found on a CCTV footage who was being weird around the girls, around two of the girls who were best friends. And they were getting food that night. And so there was like another suspicious guy, but he checked out. The ex-boyfriend checked out. The other two roommates checked out. There were 6 people who lived in the house. So the other 2 roommates, they all checked out. So with this being their number one suspect and having like all of these things adding up for him, they continued on their search to track down Kohberger. So Kohberger is actually from Pennsylvania. His family lives in Pennsylvania, which is across the country. If he was like going home, for the break, for Thanksgiving break. And so the Idaho authorities and the Pennsylvania authorities were both working together to figure out how they could get more evidence as to Kohberger being the actual person or alleged person who committed these murders. And also they wanted to be sure that once they had solid evidence that they were able to actually bring him in. So from there was a murder weapon that was left at the crime scene. And so the police ran the DNA to figure out whose DNA did not belong there. And there was DNA that did not match any of the students. They tracked the DNA found in the home, and the authorities also collected some DNA evidence from trash that was put out of the home where the Kohberger residence was in Pennsylvania. So on December 27th, they tested the sample from the murder weapon that was inside the home to the trash that they had collected from outside of the Kohberger residence. The DNA that they found on the trash was the match to the father of the person whose DNA was found in the home. There was no question about it. It was absolutely like a familiar match. So that gave them everything that they needed to go ahead and get Kohberger and have him extradited back to Idaho. So as far as the update goes, recently there was a journalist who went back through Kohberger's, like, all of his social media posts and things like that, just to get like a real sense of the type of person that he was and how he got to this point. Because as far as everybody was concerned at the time, there wasn't a link that really connected him to any of the 4 people who were murdered or any of the 6 people in total who lived in that house. Now, I will say that the University of Idaho and Washington State University are actually only about 15 minutes apart, from my understanding. So they were close in proximity. And for somebody who I went to college and about 15 minutes away from my college, it was in the same state, but still just about 15 minutes from my college, there was another large college. So I understand that in towns like that, where you have schools that are so close together, there is a lot of intermingling of the campuses. So, with like Greek life, or just with like friends from the same place who end up going to like different schools but are still like close, you have parties here, you have parties there, or like if your campus doesn't have anything going on, you'll go to this campus. And a lot of times there are a lot of like house parties where the people who own the house don't even know like 90% of the people who are there, but it's a college party, so it's like everybody's invited unless it's something like really intimate, like you can't really control like who's there. So there was some sense of, like I can understand, like where he may have like slipped through the cracks and may have not been like directly connected to these girls, but there are, like things of that sort that don't make this something that is just completely out of the ordinary or completely just like so wild of a case where you can't necessarily like, like find like a specific connection to the two. So a lot of people noted that he wasn't a real social person. He was a weird person, really like a outcast of some sorts. And an ex FBI agent actually said that he had an incel complex, which is what drove him to kill. And if you don't know what an incel is a shortened term used to describe an involuntary celibate. Basically, these are men, predominantly, who are celibate but not by choice. They have a very misogynist, like a deep, deep misogynistic mindset that is very dangerous, most of the time, if not all. And this causes them to have an unsettling amount of anger towards women because they feel as though they are entitled to something that they're not receiving. So people who knew him from like middle school and high school said that he was bullied for being overweight and things like that, and it drove him to be addicted to drugs so that he could lose weight and be more attractive physically. And he also had an instance of the typical middle school like rejection that we hear a lot of guys talk about, like, oh, like I don't treat women like they're worth anything because one really cute girl that I wanted in middle school, she turned me down and it broke my heart, and now I will never trust women again. So apparently he also had an issue or an experience that was of the same nature for him as well. And so the journalist found that posts that he put on social media from the time that he was about 16 said that he was not feeling emotions. He was very detached, and that he saw life as a video game, which is pretty concerning behavior, especially for a 16-year-old, in a sense that, at that point you're older, but you're still developing, and you're still developing, mentally, you're still developing emotionally and things of that sort. So for him to be this age and to be expressing these feelings of essentially not having feelings and just seeing everything as a video game or as like a mission that you just, like are going through on your day to day is very alarming behavior, very alarming claims to be making, especially at that age, and to recognize like those type of feelings that you're having. That's very concerning behavior, and obviously it's something that should have been a red flag. And maybe if he had gotten some therapy or some help at that point in his life, and if he had someone really monitoring those things going on with him, we probably would have been able to prevent the things that happened. But yeah, so these were some of the updates that were given as far as what was found on his older social media posts and just the things that have come out to be said about him and his character and the type of person that he was. Um, and so there was supposed to be a court date set for him, but he waived his right to a speedy trial, and his court date also got pushed to the week of June 26th of this year. I believe the original court date was supposed to happen this month, but his lawyer asked if it could be pushed back to the week of June 26th. Now, it is said that he is likely to enter a plea, but his lawyers are also just working on all of the evidence that has been presented, that has been like shown to the jury. There also, to my knowledge, hasn't been a direct link for him from him to those four students. Now, there has been some speculation as to how he knew them. I did give one earlier about, the college towns being so close together. Some people said that apparently him and all the people in the house were following each other on Instagram. And it was also mentioned that Kohberger is a vegan. And the two girls who were murdered, who were best friends, they both worked at the same restaurant. And some people said that allegedly that restaurant was a vegan restaurant. So I could kind of see how people may make the connection there as well. But there has been nothing, to my knowledge, that has been set in stone as to he knew these people because of this specific connection, and that is how he got in touch with them. If you know that, just let me know in the comments. And also, he is currently being held excuse me if I pronounce this wrong, but in the Latah County jail, and he is being held without bail, which obviously I wouldn't let him out on bail either, with the senseless murder and all of these things, and he's being held on a felony charge as well. So being held without bail makes complete sense. So as of now, this is all that I have on the Kohberger case, and as the story continues to develop, I will continue to update you all. And if you guys do want an actual deep dive on this case in particular, let me know and I'll be glad to do that. So the next story that we're going to be covering is the Cabo 6 murders of Shanquella Robinson. So Shanquella Robinson was a 25-year-old hairstylist who was from Charlotte, North Carolina, and she unfortunately passed on October 29th of 2022. She went to Cabo San Lucas with 6 of her friends, and she arrived there on October 28th. So within 24 hours or less of her going on this trip with people who she considered her friends, Shanquella unfortunately lost her life. So these supposed friends told her mother that she had passed away due to alcohol poisoning, but when her mother received her death certificate, it showed that there was a spinal cord and neck injury, which alcohol poisoning ain't gonna break your bones like that. And there was a video of the assault that had went viral, which is the real thing that caused the investigation to really which caused investigators to really, go ahead and look into this case. And in the video, if you may, or if you have or have not seen it, it's a very graphic video. I won't be showing it to you, obviously, but there was someone in the video who was recording the altercation and was like, "Oh, Quilla, you're not gonna fight back," as she's being literally beaten by someone else who was in the room, who was supposed to be her friend, but obviously, these people were not her friends by a long shot. Apparently they called for medical help, and the doctor who initially arrived to help them said that when she got there, Shanquella had stable vitals but was only dehydrated. And the friends, of course, said that she drank a lot of alcohol, and that was the reasoning why she was dehydrated and why they called for medical attention in the first place. They insisted that she be treated at the vacation property because the doctor who arrived on the scene was telling them that she needed to get to a hospital because she wasn't really able to help Shanquella at that point on the rental property. Um, the doctor tried to give IV there at the vacation home, and that's when, according to her, Shanquella started to have a seizure, and at that point they had no choice but to call the ambulance because there was nothing that could be done there, and she needed additional medical attention. Obviously, we know that Shanquilla um, did not make it to the hospital. She was actually pronounced dead at the rental property, and she was not able to have any medical attention. And I believe at that point there wasn't really any attention, or there wasn't really anything medically that could have been done to save her life at that point. In November of 2022, so about a month after Shanquella's death, there was an arrest warrant that was issued, and the arrest warrant was for femicide, which is basically causing or murdering someone because they are a woman and because her death resulted in direct aggression, not because of alcohol poisoning. So the Mexican and the US authorities haven't identified a suspect, but they have said that the suspect is a US citizen and is in the US. No one has been charged, and there has been no names released. So we do know that the names of the Cabo Sigs have been floating around the internet. Their pictures have also been floating around the internet as well. And this is coming from people who have been looking into the case, regular civilians who are interested in this case, and who are really seeking justice for Shanquella and for her family, who have been doing a lot more than the authorities have been doing as well. Um, and so Mexico is treating this case as a homicide, and they have been filing charges, and apparently they had been seeking extradition of the suspect since November 25th of last year. There has been no publicized arrest, and the family of Shanquella Robinson also have not been getting any updates from any of the U.S. officials. And I know that her mother has been reaching out to the Attorney General and just to other officers or officials who have been dealing or handling this case. And she says that basically they've just been telling her, we got this, just like leave it alone, which we all know what that means, unfortunately. And there was a spokesperson who said to the Rolling Stone that the Department of State supports a thorough investigation into the circumstances of this incident and is monitoring it closely. So we know that these are all fluff words, right? Right. Okay. Glad we're all on the same page. Basically, they're saying, yes, we know that this case is open. Yes, we know that this case is something that's going on, but leave us alone. We're going to do what we do, which they'll probably just like try and get this to blow over. And the reason why there has been a surge in people talking about this even more is because since then, since about October, November, nothing has been said about Shanquella's case. Her mother cannot get any answers. There hasn't been any information or any new information released by any of the Mexican authorities or by the US authorities. And this is something that was really, really, really heavy on a lot of the Black community's heart and other people as well, but really specifically, it was really heavy on the Black community's heart. And this is something that, you should feel safe traveling with a group of people who you consider your friends. Like, you go on trips as a group to somewhere out of the state, out of the country, even with people who you know, because you're not aware of what dangers may be there from the people who are there. So you bring people who you find or who you feel are supposed to be close to you and all of this stuff, so that you feel safer. Not so that once you get there, the people who you brought as your safety are the ones who bring harm to you. So January 9th would have been Shanquella's 26th birthday. And there has been reports that U.S. officials are refusing to cooperate with Mexico to extradite Dejanay Jackson, who was the main girl on video seen beating Shanquella. Nancy Grace, who is a TV personality who does a lot of reports on cases of the such and just different things going on in the world, she spoke with an expert about the steps that it actually takes to extradite a U.S. citizen who has been who is a suspect in such a violent crime in another country. And that expert went over some of the steps. So basically, there's an initial warrant that is issued, and the suspect has to be identified. So there needs to be some sort of naming of the person who was involved in the crime, and they have to specifically name that person and like issue the warrant to U.S. authorities, and they send a request of that warrant and extradition to the OIA. And so once they send over that information, the warrant and all of those things are sent to the district where the suspect is located, which would be in North Carolina. After that, the U.S. goes over the evidence and everything that has been presented to them, and then they also send it to a judge. Both the U.S. officials and the judge will have to evaluate that evidence and determine if there is probable cause to then go ahead and get the suspect so that they can go through the extradition process. And obviously, it's really clear in the video that Dejanay was part of this crime that was committed. There were also other people in the video who we know also participated in this crime, from the person who recorded it to the other woman who took part in beating on Shanquella as well. And then after they have determined that the person whose name is on the warrant is that person who is in their jurisdiction or who's in their district, they will then issue the extradition warrant and take that person into custody. So the actual case will be tried in whatever country this person is being extradited to, and in this case, it's Mexico. So the only thing that happens in the U.S. is an identity hearing. And this is, again, just to confirm that the suspect who has been named in the crime, who has been named in the warrant, and who the outside country is looking for is in fact the person who they physically have in the States. And then they determine whether that person can be released on like a bail type of situation pending their extradition. So that's the whole process. That's everything that it takes for the U.S. to send over these people back to the Mexican authorities. And in the latest updates, there have been no arrests made. Nobody has been arrested. All 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of the people who were involved in this senseless crime against Shanquella, they are all walking around scot-free at this point in North Carolina or wherever they may be. None of them have been arrested. No charges, no official charges have been brought against them as far as we know. Local Cabo authorities issued an extradition and arrest warrant, but there wasn't a named suspect, which is weird. It's weird because they said that they had one for Miss Dejanay Jackson, but apparently they actually never put her name down, and nobody can find any official warrant for her or for anyone that was involved. And this is where things get a little tricky, but also this is how things come into play, where even if the other 5 people or 4 people did not put their hands on Shanquella, all 6 of them are in a place where they are responsible in some way. There was a Mexican reporter who has been doing updates and who has been finding out more information that is related to this case, and everything that he finds he turns over to the authorities in order to aid them in getting closer to actually punishing those who were involved in the senseless crime. There were pictures that he had found, or I believe like it may have been like stills of from the or from like the video footage from the rental property that they were on, that was from the time that they were actually committing the crime, and then footage from when medical help had arrived on the scene. At the end of the original video, you see that Shanquella is in the bedroom. She is in what appears to be a bathing suit type of set, and she's leaned over the end of the bed, and she isn't really moving. And of course, from the injuries that were reported on her death certificate, there wouldn't have been a possible way for Shanquella to be mobile on her own accord. And the only way for her to have been moved is if there were other people moving her. And even with that, Dejanay Jackson would not have been able to move the essentially dead weight of Shanquella by herself at that point. But in another video where it's showing that there was medical attention, people who were who had came on the ambulance to render medical aid to Shanquella. Shanquella was seen in a pair of pink tights. She was seated in the living room of the property, and she had been clothed. This is a penal code violation that whoever had aided in moving Shanquella is basically guilty of some sort of crime that would result in prison time. The penal code basically states that anyone who helped an accused person of a crime to evade investigation or justice, or if they conceal or favor the concealment of the suspect, if they alter, destroy, remove evidence of the crime transcribed through Article 335, then they are to receive a minimum sentence of 6 months to 3 years in prison. If you are helping someone who who has committed a crime, and you help them alter the crime scene to look another way so that they can evade any type of, you know, punishment or them being, or any type of accountability, to alter the scene to make it not look as though a crime has been committed, then you are in some way um responsible for what has happened as well. This just puts into perspective that in some way, shape, or form, we all already knew that all of them, or we all felt that all of them should be held accountable in some sort of degree. But this just gives everybody the reassurance that what everybody in that room did was wrong. Any part that they had in this situation, they were wrong for, and they all deserve some sort of prison time. Going back to basically the lies that, or the lies that a lot of people feel have been happening, as far as authorities saying that there has been a warrant issue, or like some sort of request for extradition, and all of these things. People are wondering, why isn't there anything being done? Why hasn't anybody been arrested for these crimes? Why hasn't anybody been officially charged? Why isn't there any sort of like trial that's happening, like anything of the sort? There's video evidence. Basically all of them have spoken about this, like at some point or another. Like you can check their plane tickets, where they were staying at, like there is so much information that is literally free to the public, that the authorities can use to do something about this. And so people are just so confused as to why nothing has been done. But again, people have their assumptions as to why that is. The main assumption that has been floating around is that this is a case cover up. Why would this case be covered up? None of these people seem to be connected to any powerful politicians, or like anybody with some status, or like who just has like a real hold on the government or something of that sort. Like nobody seems to know why this case is being covered up. But there has been speculation that the owner of the villa where Shanquella and the Cabo Six were staying at is a very rich and powerful person back in Mexico. Now, I try not to speak too much on other countries' dealings, because America is just the pot calling the tea kettle black. But we know how things go when there are very rich and very powerful people who need something taken care of, and who don't want blood on their hands in any way, shape, or form. So if this is true, it will kind of make sense as to why they don't want something like this to really go through the legal system, because Cabo is a huge like tourist area. We're all familiar with Cabo, and the only reason we're familiar with Cabo is because one of our homegirls is going there for her birthday type stuff. Like we all know that Cabo is a tourist destination. So to have a murder or something this vile happen at the place that you own, it's not a good look. Even when people have all the details, and it wasn't something that happened with like local people there, or like it's not something that is connected to some type of trafficking ring or something of the sort. it is still a very bad look when you have a place that brings in so much revenue and now people think that it's not safe. These are places that are supposed to be like heavily monitored, you know, like there's supposed to be the sense of security, the sense of safety for people to come enjoy themselves, like enjoy like all of the surroundings and everything that this place has to offer in a safe manner. So if this was something that stayed on people's mind, it would deter people from wanting to travel to Cabo because they have this sense of not being safe traveling to this place or staying at this particular villa. To me, trying to sweep this under the rug just makes the villa look even worse and would honestly, like personally, would make me not want to stay there even more. But that is the biggest speculation that has risen from, you know, the lack of legal action being taken on the Cabo Six, even after all of this information has been presented. So unfortunately, all six of these people are still roaming around free. Nothing has been done about it, and it doesn't really seem like there's gonna be anything done soon, unfortunately. But this is a case where we have to continue to speak up about it. We have to continue to press. We have to continue to be loud because with all of this evidence, there's absolutely no reason why nobody is being punished or nobody is facing any consequences for what they did to Shanquella. But yeah, unfortunately, that's all the update that has been given so far on this case. But hopefully, we do actually see some motion in the right direction sometime soon. But yeah, that's all we have on that case as of now. So this next story is just as tragic as the last two. Another case of a very, very, very senseless murder that took away a young mother from her child. And the story is one that we hear way too often, and it's one that really needs to come to an end. So, over the weekend on Sunday, January 15th, Darius Miles, a 21-year-old University of Alabama basketball player, is being charged along with his friend Michael Lynn Davis, who is 20 years old. Both of these young men are being charged with capital murder for taking the life of 23-year-old Jamia Harris. Now, on Sunday at around 1:45 a.m. is when the murder took place. Now, Jamia's mother, DeCarla Cotton, said that her daughter was visiting her cousin who also attends the University of Alabama, and Jamia had went up to Tuscaloosa with her boyfriend. Now, the boyfriend states that the three of them, him, Jamia, and Jamia's cousin, were all out getting food on the Tuscaloosa Strip. So they were all there getting food when one of the men approached Jamia, and they were trying to talk to her, get her number, you know, like maybe found her attractive, wanted to talk to her. The boyfriend says that Jamia declined this advance, declined his attention, and the guy refused to go away and he refused to leave them alone. He was being very persistent in his efforts to talk to Jamia and get some sort of conversation or something out of her because he was trying to pursue her. So after she declined him, they all got back in their car and were attempting to leave. And that's when one of the guys walked up to their car and began shooting into the car. Now, as they were shooting into the car, the boyfriend shot back and hit one of the suspects. And that suspect, he sustained non-life-threatening injuries, but he was taken to the hospital by his friend, and that's how they figured out who it was that was involved in the shooting. After the shooting occurred, the driver, I'm not sure if it was Jamia's boyfriend or her cousin who was driving the car, but they drove Jamia back to campus, to campus police, but unfortunately, Jamia succumbed to her injuries and she passed away. The authorities have only released so much information, so it hasn't been said exactly who shot Jamia. Of the two friends, between Darius and Michael, it's not certain exactly, or hasn't been said exactly which one of them pulled the trigger and shot into the car, ultimately shooting and killing Jamia. And it also hasn't been released which of the two friends is the one who was actually injured. But both of them are being held without bond. And the mother of Harris said that, she was a good person. She was a good mother. She focused on, like working and all this stuff to support her child. And her son is only 5 years old, which is really heartbreaking. And her mother said that she hasn't even found a way to break the news to Jamia's son that he unfortunately will no longer be seeing his mom. And Darius Miles, of course, as I stated earlier, he was a basketball player at the University of Alabama. And once the news broke on Sunday, he was immediately let go off of the basketball team. But he maintains his innocence in saying that he was not the one who killed Jamia, or essentially he wasn't the one who pulled the trigger, so he is not directly responsible for his for Jamia's death. And the Jamia's mother gave a statement and basically said that her daughter was killed because she wouldn't talk to him, because she wouldn't talk to Miles. And this is a situation that happens way too often, where women are approached by a man and, like sometimes we just don't feel like being bothered, or, I have a boyfriend, or, like something of the sort, and men press and press and press. And the more we show our disinterest, the more it angers them to the point of violence. And a lot of women feel the need to hand over their numbers, whether they are in a relationship or not, or whether they actually want to speak to this person or not. A lot of women feel obligated to hand over their numbers anyways, because there are instances where men will get your number, or even if you give them like a fake number or whatever, they will call that number right in front of you. And women, this is common knowledge among women, that we are in danger the moment we feel like we want to decline the moment we're approached, we feel like this is a 50-50 chance of this guy just taking the hint, or this could be the last night that I'm alive. So a lot of women feel obligated for their own safety to hand over their number anyways. Some women will do it, the guy calls them right in front of them, and like the call goes through, all of this stuff, but it's like later on, like they'll block them. But we do this out of fear that something like this will happen to us. And living in that constant state of fear is not something that we should have to do because we aren't interested in someone. No matter how nicely you say it, no matter if you're actually in a relationship, no matter the circumstances, a lot of women feel like they are between a rock and a hard place the moment someone approaches them trying to get their number or trying to talk to them. This is just one of many, many, many unfortunate cases where a woman has declined a man's advance, and it unreasonably led to their death. This is a very sad case. My heart goes out to Jamia's mother, and especially to her 5-year-old son, who probably can't even comprehend like what has happened to his mother. Whether he's, whether the grandmother has told him yet or not. My heart definitely goes out to them and to all the families who have been affected by the stories that I shared with you all today. But again, as I stated earlier, this one is a new case. The other cases are still things that are ongoing. As more information comes out, as these stories develop, I'll be sure to keep you all updated, and get that information out to you as it comes to me, and just let you guys know everything that's been going on. And again, if you guys want a deeper dive into the first two stories with more details about how they came about and everything that just happened throughout those two, definitely let me know, and I'll go ahead and share those things with you. But for now, you all, especially my ladies, be safe out there. Protect yourself. Make sure that you're aware of your surroundings at all time. And just be safe, be cautious, be aware, and I will see you guys next time. Clocking out.